Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as Forty20, and joining me for another week of talking about the Parramatta Eels, the NRL and rugby league in general, my good mates, Sixties and Clint. Fellas, tentatively, I'm not going to put this in the hard black and white, but tentatively, it's the penultimate regular podcast episode of the year as we approach, 13 days to Christmas as of recording. So with one more left in the bank and a lot happening for both the Parramatta Eels and the NRL as expansion becomes official, how are you boys doing?
Well, John, before I start anything at all tonight, I have a question for both of you. Who rocks the party that rocks the party? No, it's a pertinent question. Is it yourself, John?
No,
Clint, is it you? Do you rock the party that rocks the party?
I could never rock the party the way it needs to be rocked. And on a completely unrelated note, Who Rocks the Party is tipped to be heading towards platinum sales, localized entirely within the eastern suburbs. Very interesting stuff there. Very interesting stuff.
Well, it just proves how multi-talented these individuals are. Who needs $1 million union contracts?
Who we got? We got Joey Manu, Joseph Swali'i, Sua Wong. And who was the other member of the they're not even, I suppose, B-boys is what they are. Satili Tupanua, yeah, who's now at the Bulldogs. So you've got, to be fair, it's a diverse group. You've got a Bulldog, you've got a Rooster, you've got a Wallaby, and you've got a Japanese rugby player. So, yeah, it's a very diverse group of former and current Roosters, and they definitely know how to rock the party that rocks the party.
Well, there's the answer. Diverse groups of footballers rock the party that rocks the party. There you go.
You put me onto it, Sixties, and it's like the most generic, inoffensive sort of like rap hip hop song that you could possibly have. It's just like a by the books sort of hip hop piece.
Well, fellas, the age that I am, and mind you, I guess the likes of Debbie Harry with Blondie did put out one of the early, if you can call it, rap releases. And then there was the Sugar Hill Gang with Rapper's Delight. That was 79, so they actually preceded Blondie with that Rapture in 81. So, I mean, that is probably close to my generation, but it's not really the genre of music I'm into. I mean, mind you, I don't mind the Hilltop Hoods. They're pretty good, but no, who rocks the party that rocks the party? Nah, we'll give that a miss. But, fellas, before I throw to Clint to answer who rocks the party that rocks the party, a quick shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And also just a reminder, no matter what platform you're listening to this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, that all helps to get the Cumberland Throw content out there to all of our listeners. And I also want to throw out a hello. There was a huge gang of people that was there at training today, and wanted to shout out our good mates Ben and Fletch, who were there. From the Electric podcast. Ollie was there. He's a listener that introduced himself to me today, and thanks for doing that, Ollie. Mark, we've seen there before, and Adam and his young lad, all there watching training. A couple of other people there. I'm going to apologise because I didn't get everyone's name, but have to say the Eels were really, really great, the players. As soon as there's kids there, man, they are straight down there after training. They're saying g'day to the kids. They're signing things. They're They're just really wonderful at interacting with the young fans, and really like to acknowledge the fact that they've been doing that whenever young kids are there watching training. So, that's their workplace. They get the job done, and then if they've got time, and they don't always have time, but if they've got time, they come over. They say their g'days to the young kids, and then back to their work. So, shout out to those people. Now, finally, Clint, I get to you. You got an answer to the question, the big question of tonight?
It's definitely not me, because the only thing I rock is people to sleep. So if you are the person out there who rocks the party, maybe you can comment on the show post, and we can finally identify you. It'd be a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Then we can make sure the invite goes to you for the New Year's Eve party.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, John, I think we're just about ready to throw to the news.
News team, assemble!
Well, fellas, we did a great job of ploughing through the news last week, so we're going to try to be the same this week. Let's start things off. I'm going to throw to you, John, because there's news on an Eels preseason doubleheader.
Yeah, not by way of the Eels, actually. It comes by way of the West Tigers. They've announced that the February 21 NRL trials will feature a doubleheader at Leichhardt Oval. The Eels will be taking on the Tigers in the main event of those two games, but I believe the Bulldogs and the Panthers, I think it is, meet in this one as well. I'm just trying to see if I can see the details here. But it's going to be a doubleheader at Leichhardt, so if you are planning to get out to that one, you get a bit of extra value, I suppose, if you want to get in early to watch the other game. And it's going to be really interesting because they're two lineups with plenty of new faces. And, for the Eels, obviously, it's a new coaching staff, but the Tigers, on the back of that huge recruitment campaign, will probably be rolling out the big guns. And the Eels have that new look roster with no Quinton Gufferson and a revamped backline taking on the West Tigers. So definitely a big feature of the preseason.
I'm even wondering if they're going to end up with sold out or gates closed.
That might be a case of a preseason full house. Yeah, it'll be very, very good value because it's Sea Eagles and Panthers. Sorry, so that's a cracking game in the I suppose not the curtain raiser, but the other part of the doubleheader there. That's a lot of good football even for the preseason. And West Tigers is going to be very optimistic on the back of that big recruitment drive and hoping that Benji can figure things out year two flying solo. I think that it's going to be very close to a sellout for sure.
Yeah, and so good luck people that head there to find parking and to be home at a decent hour.
And this is what you need to set aside. The Tigers are spruiking that with the 10% members discount on their end, which I'm not sure if it applies to the Eels, given it's probably should apply to the Eels. They probably should get the same sort of value. It's a GA ticket is $38.60, and if you're a junior, it's $26.90. And then they also advertise that you can also become a West Tigers member, but friends that let friends become West Tigers members. Just remember.
So hang on, it's their discount. Their discount allows you to sit on the hill for $38. Is that what you're saying?
Which is, I mean, to be fair, I've seen GA for Para Wests at Leichhardt be around 60, I think, in the regular season. So that is a market discount on regular season, but you are getting two games of value there too. I believe they shouldn't be selling separate tickets, right? So it would be a good day of football, but that is also a Friday. Bear in mind, so you need to get out there knowing that you got to sort of plan your work day around two games of football. Okay,
well, let's now go into a little bit of news that's coming out of Paradise this week, which is that both Zach Lomax and Isaiah Iongi have commenced their pre-season with the Eels. So that's now everyone on deck. There'd been a lot of conjecture from people about, why hasn't player A started their pre-season? Why hasn't player B started their pre-season? And we all know that Mitch Moses came back a little bit early, and question marks about, look, shouldn't everyone be back early if he's back early? The thing is that the RLPA has worked out a CBA with the NRL, and the players are entitled to their break. And Clint, I don't know about you, but as far as Zach Lomax is concerned, he would have had the longest season he's ever had in his career just gone. I'm actually quite happy that he's taken his break. He's getting just over a week of training before they get their 2 weeks off. But I can tell you, he slotted straight in to training today and looked like he'd been part of training for the entire time. How do you feel about that? Do you think let's just get him back when he's ready to be back, when he's had his freshen up and he's ready to go?
Well, firstly, you've probably just uttered a sentence there, Sixties, that'll have the listeners just waiting for your next post about Zach's first session and sessions henceforth. So a nice little teaser there for our listeners and readers for future posts. But yeah, absolutely. You know, like, we have to remember, these guys aren't robots, and they're playing the most physical sport at the most elite level in the world. So, you know, we can't just go and look at through the lens of, we work 48 weeks of the year with 4 weeks of annual leave or thereabouts if you're a full-time worker. So therefore, the players must do the same. There's pros and cons to every job, and the fact of the matter is, these guys are putting their bodies physically on the line each and every time that they play, as well as each and every time that they train. So, you know, they earn their break. And Zach Lomax, as you suggested, has had the longest season he's had his whole career. He would have been going, he would have had preseason with St. George last year, kicking off probably at the very early weeks of November. So, you know, it's pretty much been 11 months straight for him. If you go through to the midweeks of October, in which he finished up with the Australian side. So yeah, he's absolutely earned a break, and it's very encouraging to hear that it looks like he's fitting right in, even just with the one session.
Oh yeah, it was, and he was one of the players that came over and said hello to the supporters that were there and had some photos. So look, when a lot of these players have arrived at Kellyville, I guess you'd say they've been eased in to training. So they will do certain things in the session, and there might be other things that they sit out. And, you know, for mine, it's got a bit to do, well, I'm assuming it's got a bit to do with loading, because you've got players that have been there since the first week of November and other players who are just coming in now, and that loading has been building every week with those players. So I don't think you can expect players that are coming in and then they're doing exactly the same work in a session for the entire session as the players that have been there, say, for 4 weeks longer than what they have. So
it's how the human body works. You know, everyone's individual. They have individual strengths and weaknesses, and, you know, their bodies are at different points. So, you know, it's no different with athletes. So that's why the whole concept of load management exists within applied sports science. So, you know, it makes absolute sense that that's the approach that they would take.
Yeah, absolutely. John, I'm going to throw to you now for the next bit of news, which the Telegraph is reporting that the Eels have picked up a young Fijian.
Yeah, from the Daily Telegraph today, I believe his name is Kitione Katoga, who is currently at Canterbury. He's a young back rower of Fijian nationality. And the Daily Telegraph is reporting that he is contracted the Dogs for next year, but is set to sign a 2-year deal with the Eels, and be expected to be given a release to join the club next year, which will constitute a supplementary deal for next year, so a second-tier deal for next year, with progression to the top 30 in season 2026. Katoga debuted for the Tigers back in 2022, played a couple of games for the Dogs last year, also played for Fiji in the most recent Pacific Championship in the Cup bracket. And he's a 22-year-old forward, 187 centimetres, good size. Looks like he can run a pretty solid line. Probably going to need a bit of work in the lab defensively. But if this is true, it's another big addition to the depth for this team. That New South Wales Cup squad, the supplementary roster, it's completely overhauled, hasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the other thing too, Clint, is the Bulldogs would be. Well, I mean, we're not going to be on their Christmas card list, I wouldn't think, because
We've picked
we're
up a
picking
few,
up
haven't we?
we're picking up some of their brightest
Papali,
young players.
Samarani, now Katoga.
Yeah, absolutely. So, long may it continue.
Yeah, it's a bit of crocodile tears there for sure. It's always nice to be able to raid an arch rival and then get some talent. But yeah, really got to, again, tip the hat. This isn't like a blockbuster signing by any means, but this is the sort of signing you like to see in the New South Wales Cup. Is a young guy,
a prospect, and it can turn into a shrewd investment.
Great physical upside. If you trust your systems, you think you can turn him into a first grader. And he's not going to be a superstar, but he might add value to the NRL team, and that's a huge plus for that sort of signing. So really keen to see both he and the New South Wales Cup team, and that's going to be one of the big stories next year is the Cup team. And we're going to have to talk about what that Cup team looks like at some point, because obviously that's predicated on who you have slotting into. I think the NRL backline largely sorts itself out, barring those first two rounds of Adokar serving the final two legs of that suspension. But I think that the back row, the middle rotation, and whether they carry utility on the bench is going to define the composition of that NRL team. And that can wildly change what that Cup team looks like. And you're trying to put in these young guys from that are both flag and ball eligible that could be in Cup contention. You're talking about new signings like Katoga. You've got Dean Hawkins. You've got Volkman. You've got so many new faces. And yes, you need depth for Cup because God knows you can burn through that and start looking at Ron Massey players coming in very quickly. But there's going to be some good play. Assuming everyone's healthy and not suspended, there's going to be more than a handful of good players that aren't playing Cup every week, and that's a pretty good position to be in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, looking at the players in the Eels system who pathways players who would be on supplementary contracts or even junior contracts still. And there's some serious depth that exists there anyway. And we're going to be expecting younger players to get their opportunity. But when there are external recruits who also seem to be fitting that younger player on the rise mould, it's interesting times there. Now, of course, the signing news has been absolutely massive from an NRLW perspective. John, I'm going to throw to you. You're probably going to need the next 10 minutes to talk about all the signings that are happening in the NRLW because it's an absolute swag of them.
Well, we're all pretty pumped a couple of weeks ago when the Eels added English international forward Paige Travis to the roster, but they've been busy since with a host of both signings and re-signings. Internally, it's been headlined by an extension for talismanic prop forward Elsie Albert, who is now inked a 2-year extension that keeps her at the club to the end of 2026, so next year and the year after. Elsie's obviously been the heart and soul of that forward pack and is up there with the very best forwards in the game, so that's a huge keep for the club. On top of that, there's been another number of other in-house retentions, including young Rosie Beckett, who we all have a big rap on, who also re-signed to the end of 26. Brianna Eels, who made the move to the Eels this year, has signed on for next year alongside Maddie Jones and Mia Middleton as the Eels keep the depth in that squad ticking over. And then they've made another big splash internationally, and they've gone to they went to England before, and now they've gone to New Zealand and signed a Blackfern in Martha Mataele, who is also on the club for a 2-year deal. So she joins Beckett and Elsie Albert there till the end of 2026. And she plays across the back line. So it's going to be interesting to see where she fits in, whether it's centre or wing. But that's another top-line weapon there for the Eels in their back line. And it's going to be fierce competition for spots, get it around the right way, to crack that back line next year. So she's played Super Rugby and comes in as a very well-credentialed player. And like I said, one of 2 international acquisitions for the team as they open up the checkbook and really look to make a tilt at that title next year.
Clint, John just spoke about the competition for spots. This is really some strong roster work that's going on in the NRLW team. we had a team last year, this season just gone, that were right on the cusp of qualifying for finals football, and in fact won more games in the season than a lot more games than they'd ever won in the past, including the year they made the grand final, where they only won 2 games to qualified for the grand final. But, there were so many encouraging signs in 2024. I don't want you to go, for too overboard here, and I'm sure you won't, Clint. But John just talked about having a serious tilt at the title. Are you prepared to declare that the Eels are serious contenders, at least for finals football in 2025?
Well, for finals football, you'd think so, because the depth that's being racked up in the NRLW squad is unseen at this club since the NRLW team's inception. Yes, we've been scattered with stars here and there throughout, but it's the supporting cast around some of those stars that we've admittedly seen the quality of players decline. That doesn't look to be the case for season 2025. I think there's real reason for optimism. It's a vote of confidence in the coaching style of Steve Georgalis and how that's resonated with the squad. We saw considerable growth and in some of those supporting players across this season who've probably established themselves as genuine NRLW players now, as opposed to, I don't mean to be unkind as I say this, but part-timers playing alongside stars. They're NRLW players in their own right, and if that trajectory continues, why shouldn't we be aiming for the stars?
The big thing for me, fellas, is that expansion comes next year. And the last time expansion hit the NRLW, we got torn apart. I mean, the players that left us have formed the core part of premiership squads across the competition at Cronulla, Canberra, Brisbane. We sort of look at those rosters and you just see a number of players, whether it's Mahali or Murphy or any other player of that ilk that have gone on to be the nucleus of other teams. Expansion comes this year, and the Eels are the complete opposite. They've locked up the entire core of their squad, all their young talent, and not only that, they've gone out and made splash acquisitions for both the forward pack and the back line. So they've got their books in order. Year 2 of Steve Georgalis, I think the ladies know what the standards are now, and both for their coach and for themselves, they're going to be hungry. So I am, really happy at how the way the team and the club have conducted themselves in a tricky little period when you've got both the Bulldogs and now the Warriors coming back into the competition. The Bulldogs obviously in their first season, but instead of getting picked apart, they've strengthened themselves, and that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I mean, I think we all felt last year that there was quite a bit of improvement left in the players that were there, because it was that first season, as you said, playing under Steve Georgalis. And there's obviously, with a shorter NRLW season to the NRL season, it's, they're really starting to find what their strengths and their weaknesses are as they're heading towards the end of the regular rounds, and slightly longer competition, another preseason under their belt. I think there's some good times ahead for the NRLW team. Fellas, just continuing on with Eels news. Just a quick reminder that we've got the Members Appreciation Day at Eric Tweedale Stadium at Granville on Saturday. That runs from 9 till 1, roughly. It's a training session there that you can watch from the NRL team. So I know that there was plenty of positive comments about the open training session that was held at Fairfield. So any members that didn't get a chance to get out to Fairfield, and I'd imagine there would have been quite a fair few of you, because the weather was not kind on that day, but the weather will probably be a little bit kinder this week. There's plenty of other, both entertainment, things to do, family-friendly fun that's available for members at Granville this week. So make sure you get along to that. And another bit of football news out of the Eels, and it relates to junior reps. Believe it or not, they're already hitting their first trials for the 2025 junior representative season, which kicks off in early February. And they do have 2 more trials in January, but their first trials are this week. So that's for the Parramatta Eels, Harold Matz, Lisa Fiola, SG Ball, and Tasha Gale sides. So if you'd like to head to Kirkham Oval at Camden on Saturday, now that's a little bit of a clash because we've got the members appreciation event at Granville and these matches down at Camden on the same day, same time. But if you're not heading to Granville, or you might be an Eels supporter from down around the Campbelltown areas, and you want to head there to check out what's happening in junior reps, it all kicks off from 10:30. So the Mats and the Lisa Fiola Cup kick off at 10:30, and then you've got the senior age, the 19-year-old teams going to the field when those games have concluded. I think the Tasha Gale might be just before midday that they kick off. SG Ball maybe just a little bit after midday when they kick off. So those games are actually being played simultaneously. So the boys and the girls' games are being played simultaneously. So yeah, you might have to run around between the fields to catch a bit of everyone's game, or you might just decide to watch one game all the way through in each age group. But that's you've got a bit of choice there. But I think it's smart to do it that way, fellas, because you don't want 4 games of football back to back in this type of weather, either for the players being out there for that length of time or the staff being there. So I actually applaud having those simultaneous games, even though you can't actually get to watch everything in every grade. John, last week I recorded an interview with Jan Bryan, who is really a name that's synonymous with the Parramatta Juniors. She's decided to retire after well over 40 years of volunteering for Parramatta Juniors. I don't know how you ever can replace people who give so much of themselves to junior rugby league, but that's exactly who Jan is. She's just this absolutely lovely lady who volunteering's in her blood, and it's, as I said, it's going to be hard shoes to fill. But there is a tribute interview, as I said, that was done. It's now available on the Parramatta Juniors Instagram account, on their YouTube account, on their Facebook. We're also going to make it available through the Cumberland Throw. It will be there on our Instagram at the moment. It's there on our Facebook account, and John, you'll be uploading it to our YouTube account. And so I just wanted to congratulate Jan and thank her for all of those years of volunteering, because it's, volunteering is what helps junior clubs go around. I mean, they're the lifeblood of junior clubs. But when you get into the sort of volunteering that Jan did, where it was like up to 7 days a week that she would dedicate to her work for Parramatta, and to give an idea about the level of esteem in which she's held, she was made a life member of the Parramatta Eels, and she was the first lady that was ever made, and I think she's still the only lady that was ever made a life member of the Parramatta Eels. So, and she's got a whole truckload of honours that have been bestowed upon her for all of her work. But we wish her well in her retirement. And if you get a chance to have a look at that video, please do so. And unfortunately, John, we do have to go from passing on our regards about Jan to a little bit of sad news with regard to a former Parramatta player. last week, fellas, unfortunately, we had to end with a little bit of sad news with the passing of Graham Parry, the wonderful Eels club man who, as I said, sadly passed away. And I think it's relevant too that we're talking about him on the back of the junior representative trials this week, because Graham was a tremendous servant to the club and especially with the junior representative teams. But there was also a bit of sad news for a past NRL player for the Eels, first grade player for the Eels, Peter Langmack, and the older brother of Paul Langmack, and he was player 281, passed away at the age of 73. He was certainly a talented and versatile player, played a number of positions, centre, 5'8", lock, made his first grade debut with the Eels in 71, which was the year that the Eels actually did play finals football. Played St George in the semi-final that year, although they got beaten in extra time that particular year. He then went on, like a number of Parramatta players did, with having a run around for our little brother, the Penrith Panthers. So, and then after spending a bit of time with the Panthers, he then came back and finished his career with the Eels, playing in 77 and 78. So we send our condolences to the family, loved ones of Peter Langmack, who will always be Eels player number 281. John, that concludes our Eels news. So now it's time for you to work some of your magic.
Before I do, and I know it's on the back of the somber news there for Langmack, but a nice little bit of positive news for the Eels too. Congratulations to one of the most personable and friendly Parramatta Eels in Bowie Simonson, who recently tied the knot. Due for a well-earned honeymoon, I think, fellas. Bowie's, if you ever get down the training, he's legitimately one of the nicest guys there in a group of nice blokes, but Bowie is a fantastic fella on and off the field, so well done there, mate.
And I think it's actually been a season for weddings, because I'm pretty sure Kilmer Tuolangi got married not long before that.
That's a double celebration for him then, inking the extension and tying the knot, so well done to both fellas there.
Yeah, and as you say, at some stage they will have a honeymoon. They do get 2 weeks off for Christmas, so...
I mean, when you talk about the biggest preseason ever, if you're going to get married and then your Christmas, it probably conforms to that, doesn't it, for the fellas? So, biggest preseason for those two individuals, indeed. Sixties, yeah, you mentioned about the fellas from Bondi, currently and formerly associated, putting out their song. And early in the day, we had a chat about rugby league players that have sort of had musical careers, and obviously there are legitimately musically talented players like the Guru and his young lad Eric Groth Jr., both of whom are legit talented musicians. And there's been some other sort of edge cases here and there, but that sort of got me in the theme for trying to find the greatest ever rugby league song, or not rugby league song, because then you're talking about the promo stuff like Simply the Best and That's My Team, but the greatest song performed by a rugby league player. And I was thinking about a few different things, and you could have gone down the path of legit artists, and I mean that's a little bit too sanitized and boring. So I sort of came back to the retirement of Paul Vaughton last week from all forms of media, and it sort of got me thinking back to the footy show. And there were a couple of gems there, and Reg Reagan's Bring Back the Biff, or I'm Never Going to See the Biff Again, which I believe riffed the Angels, was certainly up there. But in terms of rugby league shows, in terms of rugby league songs, in terms of the footy show, there was only one song. So I bring you The Chief.
My love is like a prison wall. There's nothing left to make me feel small. But you can leave me dead and so that's gold. Always believe in that goal. If you've got a hand and a fist, you're indestructible. Always believe in your goal.
right down to the authentic drumstick dropping. A riff of obviously Spandau Ballet's Gold, but Paul Harrigan, the Chief, and his famous That's Gold segment on the Footy Show with their cover there. And I think that was an iconic part of the Footy Show. The old, was it the thumb up on the open hand as a fist? But yeah, that was a fun time for TV and footy. So That's Gold by the Chief.
And those lyrics, they must speak to you. If you've got a hand and a fist, you're indestructible. It's words to live your life by.
You know what? Maybe for post-try July, we can get one player to do a sneaky little That's Gold after the try-scoring process. It'd be a nice little nod to the Chief in the Footy Show.
Maybe a player on debut scoring a try. That would be even better.
Yeah.
Because then it's etched in rugby league folklore. John Carley on debut for the Parramatta Eels. Oh, he's gone. That's gold.
You'd hope that the commentary team would clue into it pretty quickly. So we'll put that one in the pie in the sky sort of column.
Well, fellas, let's press on now with the NRL news. PNG confirmed for 2028. Our mate, Joey Grima. Wow. Congratulations to Joey. And even in the press release today, they talked about the key role that Joey played, the highly credentialed Joey Grima in setting up the Pathways programs, setting PNG up for production line of local talent coming through. We couldn't be happier for Joey. Look, Joey's always going to have blue and gold, absolutely surging through his veins. But man, he loves PNG, has done for a long time, has done work with them over the years. He was recruited by Andrew Hill to go up there and to get this really important Pathways foundations in place. He's done that. It was key to them getting the license. Mate, fellas, I couldn't be happier than what I am for Joey with this news that came through today. But let's also talk about, well, I'm going to throw it at each of you and whatever you want to say regarding Joey, but also that news about PNG itself coming in, your takes on it. John, first of all, to you.
I mean, I'm excited for PNG, and I know it's been a polarising subject for the NRL fan base because of the geopolitical nature behind, always the conversation of the geopolitical nature behind the reason for expansion. I'm going to put that aside and just celebrate the fact that perhaps the most league-mad country in the world is now going to be inducted into the NRL with a full 4 years of preparation. They're not rushing into this. In terms of getting that NRL team established, they've got multiple years now to get their head coach, get their recruitment, get their internal development in place. And I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to guarantee them to be competitive from day dot. It's definitely going to be a process, but at least there is time for a strong plan to be put into place. And with Joey Grima having been there for over a year now, the groundwork is being laid as we literally record this podcast. So very, very excited there. Really keen to see who they're going to make or aim to make their coach, given that Wayne Bennett, who was sort of the guy that had been quietly earmarked as the guy for the PNG venture, is at Souths, but it does line up so he could be the PNG guy still, right? He signed
But he'll be 90 years old, won't he, by that time?
Yeah, well, we often joke that he will literally die coaching rugby league. That would certainly put him on the track there to literally just make it his entire life's mission to coach rugby league. Brad Arthur's been mentioned, although Brad's probably got a stronger tie towards Western Australia, which is still, very much in the mix, despite the breakdown recently on the back of financial sort of fiscal planning. But yeah, I am excited. I'm really keen to see how their early years in the competition go. I'm hoping that they're not just also-rans and can legitimately, be around top 8 or whatever the finals look like at that time. Maybe we're not going to be in the top 8 by then, with 19 or maybe 20 teams, sort of in the mix. Maybe it moves to a different final system. But I'm hoping that they can be competitive and really help make the product of rugby league start moving across international borders. And I know it's still only the Pacific, but yeah, just keen to see it happen.
Well, Clint, look, I was obviously taking the piss in saying that Wayne Bennett will be 90 years old then, but
it's not that old, but
it won't be far.
It does line up for him to go there, right? He's got a 3-year deal at Souths, and then that will see him through 25, 26, 27, which conveniently lines up with 2028 at PNG.
I'll tell you what, he's going to be of advanced years by then. But Clint, I don't know how you follow on from John, because I don't know that there's that many rugby league podcasts out there. Certainly not too many Parramatta-based rugby league podcasts recorded in Western Sydney for the fans of the Parramatta Eels that would use the term geopolitical during their football discussions. So I now challenge you to follow up John's commentary on the PNG entry.
Well, firstly, to our good friend Joey Grima, congratulations. What a historic moment and part of history to be a part of. Joey's very dear to all of us. He's been dear to my family for a number of years. This very much feels like the fruits of, obviously it's a collective effort, but the fruits of his labor, and you got to really go in there and do some real hard yakka to establish these foundations as he has, and have it be such a pivotal contributing factor, I should say, to the bid's success. Well, he should be enjoying a drink or two tonight with a big smile on his face and pride brewing through him, because it's pretty sensational what's been achieved. It really is history in the making. On the other hand, there as well, as John so eloquently put, there is a geopolitical factor to all of this. And there'll be a number of people who heard the announcement today and won't be too happy with this. Least of all, probably Western Australia, who probably eyed themselves being the 18th team, or the Perth bid, I should say, eyed themselves being the 18th team. But rugby league in Papua New Guinea, to be completely clear, it's the only country in the world in which rugby league is the national sport. So geopolitical issues noted, it's something that kind of felt like it was always going to happen at some point in time regardless. And while there will be some financial aid and assistance that's helping that, you hope for the greater good of rugby league and the game as a whole, that this is something that is a bit of a watershed moment, and strengthens the geopolitical ties between Australia and Papua New Guinea.
And the other thing worth considering too is that I suppose, given our own biases and influences, you sort of look at PNG and think that it's a small country. PNG's population is ticking towards 11 mil. Like they are a legitimate, like diamond in the rough, whatever you want to call it, in terms of, and that's why obviously we talk about that geopolitical undercurrents to it between Australia and China. There is a reason why there are these big countries sort of looking at PNG and really keen to invest and help facilitate their growth. But like you said, Quint, rugby league is their national sport. Putting aside all the bullshit about making money, which is what all the other parties are interested in, this is a country that loves rugby league. And as people who also love rugby league, I'm just invested in seeing them get into the game and have a chance to succeed. Like that, we just love this game, and this is a chance to do something big for the game.
And you're talking about bringing a country in, just like when the Warriors came in, that was bringing New Zealand, a country, into the NRL. And that's really what's happening here. We know it's not bringing a country into rugby league, it's bringing a country into the high-profile sport and competition of the NRL. So
there's definitely some arguments there, Sixties, that you'll hear from people that go, well, it's happening because of a handout. But I think equally a position can be argued that it's not a handout, but it's a leg up. And and giving them the opportunity, as you said, to sit at the table. And we know that sport is built on the passion of a lot of people. Having the right people there, and we know that Andrew Hill and Joey Grima are two of the very best credentialed administrators and football people in rugby league. The foundations are there for this to take off.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about setting strong foundations, John, the NRL is really looking at shoring itself up against future problems with their asset building, because when COVID hit, the NRL was in disastrous territory because in their entire history, they basically never acquired assets. And you're talking about what was a history of more than 100 years and no assets. And one thing you're now going to have to congratulate the NRL on is they've acquired some significant assets and they are looking to add more as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to see where, just in the short period since COVID to now that the NRL is in a position where they can, broaden that investment portfolio. And in the context of where they've bought, Port Macquarie and Brisbane are very strong places to invest in. The Mid-North Coast is always a popular sort of tourist and growth spot between Coffs Harbour and Port Macquarie, and then Brisbane is Brisbane, right? Like, it's literally one of the urban centres of the country. So, yeah, can't complain too much. I know people will grumble about the investment of funds and where it could have been allocated towards, juniors, officials, and all those sort of things. But this sort of is a separate expense, right? This is a long-term viability in expense or investment as opposed to an operating expense. And you can certainly legitimately grumble about those other things, but this is just good business for the NRL. Gives them a much stronger base to continue to grow not necessarily just the game itself, but the brand of the NRL. Means that they're far more resilient against anything similar to COVID or any sort of setback in that sort of capacity. So, yeah, I can't really complain about this. This is just prudent business.
Yeah, so for them to acquire properties that are involved in hospitality and tourism industries, and therefore not only create a property portfolio, but an ongoing revenue stream from those properties. It is shrewd investment. Clint, you do wonder, from the entire history of the game in Australia, how it was that there wasn't any sort of asset building that took place over a century.
It's probably a good reflection of the volunteer base in which sport and rugby league has been built on in this country. And, when you think about the professionalism of rugby league and its evolution, the NRL, as we know, has only existed since 1998, and there was still plenty of part-time players in the early years of the NRL as well who had to supplement their income outside of their football training schedule. So look, it's been a slow evolution, but geez, the last 20 or 30 years have happened really fast. So when you kind of look back on it and you reflect on the history, it's not hard to see why or how they end up where they were. It's a little frustrating, I suppose, as fans of the game, that you hope that there was a little bit more business acumen, but it just wasn't. It wasn't established enough, and it didn't attract those types of people because the money involved in the game at that point in time wouldn't have attracted the type of people who would have seeked out these opportunities. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. But the fact that diversification is front and center of the administrator's mind when it comes to securing the game's future is not only positive for rugby league itself, but the fans that hold it so dearly to their heart and that turn up and watch the games week in, week out. So, business diversification is nothing new to anyone in the corporate world. I think we've all worked for or know people who've worked for businesses that, this is just 101. And I don't want it to sound like I'm being a rugby league apologist, but it's been steps towards this process. It's not something that just it probably didn't have the opportunity to do this from day dot. And you consider, as I said, it's grounding in volunteerism and for the love of it and the passion of it. It kind of makes sense how we're only sort of seeing this phase of evolution come to fruition now.
Yeah. Fellas, just pressing on. I'm coming back to that question at the start of the show. Who rocks the party that rocks the party? Maybe it's Reece Robson. Maybe it's not Brandon Smith. Discuss.
We knew the Roosters were going to make a splashy acquisition. In years gone by, we'd always meme about the salary cap or the salary cap. There was a sombrero for them. They've bled a litany of players. And even considering that they're going to re-sign Sam Walker for a pretty hefty extension, they had more than the means to sign someone like Reece Robson. Yeah, it's a bit of a meme that he ends up signing for them. But 4 years for the representative dummy half. It's a good pickup for the Roosters. Robson is he's a rock solid player. He's one of those players where I don't think his ceiling's necessarily super high in the context of superstars, but he's just ultra consistent. His floor is a 6
Very
every
well
week,
said.
and you get him at a 7 or an 8 most weeks at dummy half. So it's a very good pickup for them.
And most coaches kill for that.
The coaches
player, right?
in that position. I mean, any position coaches love consistency, but dummy half, we were literally talking about it, in recent weeks about it's a devalued position across the NRL, but it's the position that handles the ball the most, and it has as many offensive responsibilities as your halfback, and defensively, it's the linchpin of your middle corridor. So there is a lot that it brings to the table. It's a great pickup for the Roosters. But like you said, 60s, it means that Brandon Smith's... there was already rumours about Brandon Smith's position at the Roosters and some off-field stuff, rumour-mongering stuff that we don't get into on the podcast, but essentially he wasn't seen as a great fit for their locker room, great fit for their play style. They've gone out and signed a representative dummy half for 4 years that plays 80 minutes, or near enough. Brandon Smith, he can't be long for the Roosters, so where does he go? Very talented player. He's a bit of a tweener between lock and dummy half. I would argue that he's not really a conventional dummy half, and his best football comes when playing that small ball lock forward with a team that can go up tempo for the middle and sort of utilise him as the secondary or tertiary runner on the back of someone setting the tone. But yeah, where does he fit? He is a former Melbourne Storm player, and we do have a coach that has already recruited one former Melbourne Storm player. The Parramatta Eels in the mix for Brandon Smith. He potentially brings baggage, but if it's not Parramatta, who else would be interested in Brandon Smith? And what's the time frame? Do the Roosters cut him this year if there's a suitor elsewhere? Because Reece Robson's not there until 2026. I don't know. This is one of probably the big storylines for next year now is what happens to Brandon Smith.
Well, I'm going to throw to Clint for comment now, but just before I do, look, I think you've sort of answered the question there already, John, because it's an imbalance for the Roosters or any team to invest that much money into one position.
Yeah, and Smith was recruited on like a rumoured $850,000 to the Roosters, and how much of that is like directly under, like not even like memeing about cheating the salary cap, but there are provisions to distribute for TPAs and whatnot. Maybe it's less than the cap, but he was recruited on a big deal. So
yeah,
is he willing to accept a lesser deal? Will the market give him a lesser deal? Will there be, people there are often clubs that will splash cash regardless. Like I said, this is a big storyline for next year, regardless of whether the Parramatta Eels are involved or not. And I'd probably prefer them not to be, given that I think that Brandon Smith's off-field issues probably complicate things too much for a team that's sort of trying to find its new identity with a new captain, a new coach, and a team overhaul. But he, at his best, he is an impact player. He makes a difference. He tilts the field. So there will be coaches, there will be GMs or the equivalent at a club, head of recruitment and whatnot, thinking I can fix him or he works for us. He is the missing piece. We can, smooth out the rough edges that the Roosters couldn't. That the reasons why Melbourne moved on from him, which is probably a little bit arrogant when you think about the two clubs that are potentially moving on from him. But that's how not just rugby league, that's how sports work. You look at the upside and weigh it up against the downside, and oftentimes you get blinded by the upside.
Yeah, look, I mean, Clint, I want to come to you for your comment now, but I don't see Parramatta linking with Brandon Smith. I could be incredibly wrong. I just don't see it happening. But Clint, what's your thoughts on Brandon Smith and the Roosters?
Well, he found himself in a precarious situation there in spite of his injury, right? But his injury has only expedited his situation. And the fact of the matter is, I think regardless of that injury, he was going to find it hard to demand the same type of dollars in the market. Now it's a foregone conclusion that he will struggle to demand the same type of dollars in the market. Particularly as you alluded to earlier, John, and what we've spoken about in previous weeks, that hooker is a little bit of a dying commodity in terms of the makeup of your salary cap, and you throw into the mix that he hasn't set the world on fire in that position. And I very much agree with the notion that he is a player capable of playing hooker, but he's probably much stronger as a running forward. And he's the type of player that you might use to start the first 20 at hooker, just so that you can you can have a bit of energy and set your defensive line. But after that point in time, you bring someone on to play out hooker for the remaining 60 minutes, and he moves into the middle forward rotation. Would Parramatta be interested? Well, I mean, if you do a little bit of dot connecting, we're supposedly in the market for a hooker. He's someone that's supposedly in the market for a club in Sydney. It's easy to make the connection that that's a possibility, right? But much like you boys have both said, I don't think that it's quite the move that we'd be looking to make. Again, like you said, Sixties, I could be completely wrong, but it's kind of a 2 + 2 = 3 scenario for me. There's something a bit short of making it equate to 4. But funny things happen and strange things happen in rugby league.
We obviously took the punt on Josh Adokar. And he came off getting sacked by the Bulldogs for that entire sequence of events. But his contract with the Parramatta Eels also reflects that. It's a byproduct of risk management, right? Which is what you're getting at. Yeah. And everything's negotiable for the right price. Exactly. So, that is the cold hard truth of professional sports. Is everything is there for the right price. And
if he was suddenly available for half his alleged Roosters contract, I think he'd have a lot of suitors very interested.
Yes, agree. There'll be suddenly those rough edges become a lot smoother. And
yes,
there are some memorable quotes coming out of this podcast that I just never thought would be associated with a footy podcast.
I've told you.
Clint, you've just gone. It is a byproduct of risk management. And Forty's had his geopolitical comment.
I told you my favorite NFL development quote of all time is that if Hannibal Lecter ran a 4.340, scouts would say he has an eating disorder. And that is professional sports in a nutshell for me. That if the right skills are there and the right value is there, you can overlook so much. And I'm not saying here that the Eels have got no morals and whatnot, or rugby league clubs have got no morals. But if Brandon Smith is there for $400,000, then suddenly like you put it, Quint, that your offset risk there when you look at what he presents to you away from the field and what he brings you on the field versus his cap hit, that intersection of all those different things means that the value's there. And Josh Adokar,
it's a Venn diagram.
Yeah, exactly. There's 3 or 4 factors all overlapping here into a little Venn perfect little niche there. And Josh Adokar's deal is exactly it. It's a 1+1, 1 year plus a club option for good value. If you're getting someone like Brandon Smith for that sort of notional value, then a lot of clubs will be lined up for it, regardless of any question marks. So, like I said, deals may not be involved, but there is a tie to the Melbourne Storm there from Coach Riles and obviously Brandon Smith there. So that's something you can't disregard. It definitely played a factor in Josh Adokar's recruitment. and it will probably at least mean that the Eels will do due diligence on the Brandon Smith situation. But it's one of the big storylines to watch, and whether the Eels involved or not, I'm just curious to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, look, I think if he parts ways with the Roosters, there's no doubt he's going to find a new home. It'll simply be, you have to start working out freight. Does he part ways with the Roosters, where the Roosters start negotiating with another club about an agreed price to go there? Do they just straight out release him? Whatever the case may be, it will be interesting to follow. But now we move on, because there's another little bit of market news. John, don't know whether there's too much in it as yet, but there are rumours linking Bateman to the Cowboys.
Yeah, still contracted with the West Tigers, I believe. But John Bateman, linked strongly to the Rabbitohs in recent weeks, has apparently pulled out of talks with the South Sydney franchise. And Daily Telegraph is reporting that the Cowboys are now emerging as a possible suitor. That's not strong terminology. Emerging as a possible suitor. I don't know. I mean, do they need him? They've got a couple of really good young back rowers there, and Nane and I know they lost Fini Filiaki to the Dolphins, but Nane and Hilan Luki, right? They've got a couple of really good.
The translation with all of that, and I'm sure most people listening can piece this together. The Cowboys are interested if the Tigers are willing to pay enough of the freight for them to be interested.
Exactly, and we talk about, again, that intersection of essentially capped hit to a performance and whatnot. This is one of those formulas here in play as well. So, yeah, it seems pretty clear that if he is going to be on the West Tigers next year, it's going to be because no one else could get that offset payment from Wests to line up properly, and he'll be there for the paycheck only. He seems pretty destined to be somewhere else. The question is how much the Tigers want to pay, who wants to step up. I mean, look, John Bateman was a great player, but knock on wood, I'm happy that the Eels haven't been linked to him. I think that our back row stocks, you could argue we could use a strike back rower, but that's clearly not what Bateman is right now. And I, in general, I'm pretty happy with our back row stocks when you factor in some young guys. Obviously, Charlie Guym is there, 60s, but beyond that, Josiah Funayuta, Will Latu, there's a few young kids coming through that I think we're better off investing in than someone like Bateman. And yeah, who knows where he ends up? But like I said, as long as it's not Parramatta. Yeah,
and of course the new signing to Katoga.
And that's another one, isn't it? Kitione Katoga. We've got another young lad to track the progress of. So it's going to be Cup is going to be incredibly fun next year. So obviously,
very much so.
Get out there when you can. Watch it on Fox when you can. But otherwise, TCT will have you covered for plenty of New South Wales Cup action in season 2025.
And people might be able to get out and watch a bit of Cup at the new facility at Kellyville at some stage.
That's going to be
this
very
coming
exciting.
Season.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah. Clint, moving on, Isaiah Yeo, what a season he's had, and he's capped off 2024 with the Golden Boot. I mean, does it get much better for one player?
Probably not. I mean, the fact of the matter is he's been ultra consistent for a long time, and I say that as a comment that predates Penrith's 4P. I know he's someone that you've been a big fan of for a long time, Sixties, and he's he is an incredible club player. But I felt like he really elevated his game in the representative arena this year, both in Origin and for Australia. And the Golden Boot has taken on a different definition, I think, in the last 4 or 5 years, in which it's awarded to the International Player of the Year based on international representative games played, as opposed to what it used to be, which was the world's best player based on the sum of their form throughout a calendar year. But even if it was still the previous aforementioned criteria, I think he wins it in that in that makeup as well. He's been that strong, So very, very deserved winner, and it's probably something he'll look back on when his career's over and gone, wow, I had all of these great accolades and achievements throughout my career, and I don't think there's a single person who's seen him play that wouldn't agree that he deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. John, we press on, the NRL ads in America have begun.
Yeah, the Gronk.
Yeah, talk us through the NFL personality that the NRL uses for their marketing for the Vegas venture.
The NRL, they use him for round zero this year. Well, currently this year still. So the round zero just passed, and they've gone back to him for the 2025 advertising. Rob Gronkowski, mostly known for his tenure at the New England Patriots alongside Tom Brady, but he also followed Tom Brady to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and won Super Bowls for both franchises. The Gronk is he's a real character. One of the greatest tight ends to ever play NFL, but also the tight ends are a special breed. Sixties. You got to understand that they're like the frat boys that never grew out of college, and Gronkowski really typifies that. He's a just really happy-go-lucky party boy. Really positive in all his media work and just a funny guy. So a good fit to sort of try and spruik NRL. And from what I understand, they're doing a much better job on the terminology of the ads. He is actually selling rugby league and not rugby, which is a big step forwards after the last advertising campaign. But yeah, advertising campaigns are always going to be divisive because that's the nature of advertising. You can't hit every demographic, or at least once in a blue moon, maybe you can with those singular sort of artistic pieces of advertising. But I do think the NRL is on the right track with someone like Gronkowski. I think it probably engages the sort of people that they want getting invested in the game. And the other thing too is that Gronk is pretty active on social media. He does podcasts. He's part of the broadcast platform for, I believe it must be ESPN or Fox, right? If he's being used for this, I'm just trying to recall which crew he's part of. But yeah, it's just a good face for the game, or good American face for the game, and yeah, hopefully that reflects in progress for round zero next year, which also features the 2 extra games. So it's going to be a real fiesta of football.
Well, look, we had some great feedback about this. The advertisements commencing from our American mate Ron Greep, the friend of the Cumberland Throw, friend of our podcast, has been on our podcast, giving his comments about the NRL and the impact in America and how much he enjoys it. But one of those messages he sent through, Clint, was about how happy he was for the Gronk to be using the term rugby league rather than rugby. It might seem like it's something that's superficial, but I think it's important in selling the game in America.
Big time, and you have to use all the assets at your disposal, and these are the easy ins, and it's the type of thing that looks gimmicky at the start, but it's also the thing that builds a bit of and consumer and customer trust, particularly with the American market, because Rob Gronkowski is a very known quantity over there for a number of reasons that John touched on. He's a character that many people love, even if they didn't follow New England or Tampa Bay. And I must add to John's comments, I don't think I've ever seen that guy be unhappy. I don't think I've ever seen him have anything other than an ear smile on his face. Very, very infectious character and personality that just resonates with the common man. And that's what the rugby league fan is too. It's the people's sport. It's the people's game here on the east coast of Australia. So I think it's smart to be marrying those things up, and you use that as the grounding to expand a little bit further and push a little bit further with your efforts year on year. And hopefully over the course of time, and this is what the NRL will be banking on, is that you create some of those deeper connected communities.
Well, Clint, you just mentioned the people's game. I'm going to throw back to the people's champ of TCT in 40. Ron sent through a discussion point for us that he'd like us to look at, which is over in the MLB, the Major League Baseball. Juan Soto has just signed a 15-year, $765 million and above contract. Now, obviously that's different money to NRL contracts, but
just a
it's
different order of
record.
magnitude, just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. But in terms of record setting, that's obviously massive news over
Biggest
there.
ever. Yeah, biggest ever for baseball.
Yeah. So what he was wondering is, would there be an NRL player, either in recent years or someone right now, who could set the stage for, or could be that sort of record setter themselves if they were on the open market, that it would be record-setting territory. And I'm going to kick things off. I think it's really hard with this because some of the biggest contracts that you might expect maybe don't quite end up being that way because players stay with their current clubs.
That's the big thing. Yeah, that's the big one that probably curtails the like real world examples of it in the NRL. First off, the MLB is absolutely wilding out right now. I was speaking to you, Sixties, in the green room that the LA Dodgers have literally built a super team and looking to make it an ultra team. Like the things they're doing are just insane. Juan Soto is fascinating. Very, very good batter. Absolutely phenomenal eye. One of the best walk rates when you literally, when you don't hit the ball, but you take 4 balls and then take your base as a result of all time. He's got a really great eye for the pitcher and the pitch that's coming in. But yeah, the big thing for Juan Soto is relative to baseball. Again, this is a very complex background, but baseball has a very odd, at least analogous to rugby league, path to first grade or the big leagues. You get drafted in a really, like they have 17-round drafts or more, and then you go to the minor leagues and you progress through single A, high A, double A, triple A, all the way up to MLB, and you can get caught up from high A if you're a superstar, I suppose, or double A. Juan Soto hit free agency because he got into the MLB really young, and so he actually went to free agency right now. I think he's just turned 26, and most superstars are sort of, at the very least, late 20s, oftentimes on the other side of 30 when they get to this contract state, when they get through all their arbitration years in their contracts and can actually hit free agency and sign somewhere. So he sort of attracted not unprecedented, but a nearly unprecedented amount of demand. The Yankees, who had his contract prior to going to free agency because they traded for him, were in. The New York Mets, the Yankees' rivals, who were the eventual victors for the signature, also in. The Boston Red Sox were in. I believe the LA Dodgers were in for a bit too. I think maybe Toronto, the Blue Jays might have been in too. I might be wrong on that one, but he had a big market, and he ends up signing this deal, 15 years. Was it 15 years? Did we say 565 million? So 765 million. And the thing with these baseball deals is that these clubs sign them knowing that there's going to be dead money at the end of them. And Juan Soto is on the far younger side, so they actually get way more value out of that. So he'll actually be 41 when his contract expires, which means that there's only going to be a few years of dead value there because he'll play as a designated hitter in the last 4 or 5 years of his contract, or first base maybe, moving from the outfield. So they'll get plenty of value out of him, or they could also trade him. But yeah, it's a crazy amount of money. But right now, you got Shohei Ohtani, who just had a 10 year. He just signed a $700 million US deal for 10 years. And he came across from the Japanese baseball system as a dual threat. So he's a modern-day Babe Ruth. But the Dodgers end up signing him from the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim after he went there on the international contract. And the best part about him is that he signed the 10-year, $700 million deal, but he's only been paid $2 million a year for the next, 10 years? Yeah. And then they've deferred the rest of the payments for another 10 years. So he earns $68 million every year after that. So they've, in a sport with no salary cap, they've signed the best player since Babe Ruth, who literally pitches and bats like a superstar, to $2 million a year for the team that already had the highest payroll. So the Dodgers are like beyond supervillain status right now. But yeah, Juan Soto, player that compares to him in rugby league. If Nathan Cleary went to the market, That's, I think, probably a great, if he legitimately went to the market as a 24, 25-year-old best halfback in the competition, that's probably your guess there. Otherwise, Reece Walsh, I suppose. It's hard because, in the NRL, those sort of players very rarely, even though we know that they test their market unofficially, they get their agent to sound out other offers, they don't actually go to market the way a lot of these guys do. So I would say Nathan Cleary or Reece Walsh probably the best bets for the NRL, mate.
Clint, what sort of money do you think would drag a Nathan Cleary away from the Panthers or his father? What would a club have to come up with from a record-setting perspective for him to seriously consider walking out on the team that he's won all those premierships with?
Are we saying money's no object, or within the?
No. Let's say.
Cap?
Let's say, because obviously it's not going to be limitless because you have got a salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
But what sort of numbers do you think a club could be able to go to for one player? Because that's the other side of it, isn't it? Like, it's hard to drag players out of a club when there's not going to be a massive difference in contract money that's being offered at the top end. And then once you factor in, the inconvenience of leaving a club, taxation, a whole lot of other factors. And so we know what some of those other factors are for Nathan Cleary at the Panthers. But if he, if he was considering it, if he was considering a move elsewhere, what do you reckon the sort of coin that would have to be offered to get him to seriously consider leaving the Panthers?
As a starting point, probably 20% of the club salary cap. That's looking to recruit him. So let's just use round figures here for the sake of easy math. If the salary cap was 10 million, and I know it's higher, but if it was 10 million, that would be a contract of 2 million against the salary cap, plus whatever other bonuses that exist outside of it.
Yeah.
So we go a little bit higher than that. That would be a starting point. I think to really seal the deal, you probably have to do 25%. So in that same 10 million example, would be 2.5 million of the 10 million. Because that's beyond life-altering money for a lot of people. But it's the type of thing that if you're a professional athlete, you can guarantee that you never have to work a day again if you manage that money correctly.
I think you're probably at the right percentage there, Clint, because if we jump to a different code, moving from baseball to NFL, you sort of put the ballpark between 20 and 25%. The NFL salary cap is $255.5 million US. And right now, the top quarterbacks are getting around 60 mil on an average per year basis, which works out to about 23.5% of that salary cap. And obviously, quarterback is a hyper dominant position in terms of the influence it puts on the offensive side of the ball. But that's pretty similar to what a halfback does, right? So that probably is a good comparison there, about 25% of the salary cap. And right now, what are we running at, a 12.5 mil salary cap?
Yes, that's correct.
You're looking at over $3 million a year for an NRL player. 3.125 on a 12.5 sort of projection on the cap there. So $3,125,000 a year to get Nathan Cleary out of Penrith.
Yeah, it's not going to really measure up against $765 million contract.
No, I mean it's still
isn't it crazy? He pays more in tax than probably a whole NRL team.
Yeah, exactly.
He would.
The Nathan Cleary salary is enough to set yourself up, for a very good life with prudent investment. What you're talking about for these guys, and obviously they're owned, or the franchise are owned by billionaires. So we're talking about a scale of money here that is so beyond the normal person's comprehension. And I always say this to my mates, that $1 billion is so incomprehensible in terms of money that you could not spend it. But Juan Soto here, $765 million US. Yes, there's obviously a huge tax component there that he, even with good accounting, he's still got to pay. But that is so far beyond generational wealth. That is if your entire bloodline will never be poor. That is how much money that is. Crazy.
Yeah. Now let's try and finish things off with trying to make another tenuous link between a sport and rugby league, a sport in the headlines, international headlines, at least national ones. Gout.
How cool! What a great story.
And I mean, would a professional sport like rugby league ever be a serious consideration for someone who is maybe going to be a world-class superstar sprinter? You'd probably say no, wouldn't you?
I think the fact that he, as crazy it is for an Australian guy to be talked about like this, because he is legitimately world class. Like, you know, the potential there at 16 years of age, turning 17 in a couple of weeks. I think I'm just looking at his profile here. 29th of December is his birthday, so turning 17 in a couple of weeks. It's funny though, isn't it? Because the prestige of the 100, 200 in the Olympics is so high. I don't know what the sort of salary. I mean, obviously you have someone like Usain Bolt who, just on the pure sponsorship and promotional stuff, would have earned a fortune because of just how special he was. I don't know what the salary of a world class sprinter is. I can't imagine it's that prolific. But the
no, it's like a lot of those athletes. It's endorsements that drive their salary up. It's not the sport itself.
And he'd obviously, in terms of he'd corner the entire Australian market, no doubt. And plus the international stuff, whichever, you know, whether it's Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, whichever, you know, make he goes with for clothes, all that sort of thing. But yeah, you know, young lad, you know, obviously familial ties to Sudan, but I think he's like a second generation Aussie. He's like, you know, he's a true Aussie in that sense. But just the speed he's running, he ran nearly a 20 flat 200. He ran a nearly 10 flat like win unassisted 100 at 16 turning 17. Like, that is crazy. What a special talent. It would be awesome to see him running on obviously the flanks in rugby league, and, you know, doing the old kick ahead and whatnot for him, and just giving him some open space. But it is going to be so awesome to have a legit track and field star, you know, pending, you know, staying healthy and all those other things for Australia in the Olympics moving forwards. What a cool story, and just something that, you know, you got to think the entire country's going to get behind, because when you have someone that's potentially that special, it brings everyone in behind them. So just a cool story to definitely put there and monitor.
Well, there was one infamous Australian Olympian who jumped countries.
Oh, Sullivan, is that the name? The bicycle.
Yeah.
Got banned from Australian Olympics. What was it? Australian. I have to Google this quickly. Australian Olympic athlete traitor, I suppose. What's Google got for us here? No, not Michael Phelps. It was cycling. Matthew Richardson, not Sullivan. Sorry. Yeah, he defected to Great Britain. Coward. Who defects? who defects to Great Britain? Seriously.
The motherland came knocking.
Yeah, I was going to say
literally a prisoner of His Royal Majesty, I suppose now, but it's a king in charge. What a pom.
So, I mean, Clint, would Australian athletics have to guard against other countries providing some levels of incentive, be it, you know, the training, the coaching, whatever it might be, to get him to change his citizenship, his allegiances, because as John just said, the prestige that it could bring for Athletics Australia, and the you know, at a time when Australia would really, really benefit from having you know, such a superstar sprinter. What do you think?
Absolutely, they will have to, because that carrot will always be dangled, no matter what provisions are put in place. The thing that works in Australia's favour is that we've got an Olympics coming to us in 2032. So you know, there will be an element of, and the fact that it's a home Olympics for him, from where I think from where is he based in Brisbane, or no, he recently competed in something in Brisbane. I'm probably mixing those two things up. But the other thing that he needs to be protected on, which I think is actually probably more significant, is the weight of expectation and potentially burning him out before he even gets to that point, because it's a lot of immediate attention for a teenager to be receiving. And we know in this day and age that that can intensify incredibly quickly, and you need to have a good support system around you in order to be able to handle that. And so we don't want to burn him out before he's had an opportunity to flourish. So I hope that those that are nearest and dearest to him and closest to him are putting the necessary provisions in place to ensure that he's given every opportunity to succeed, and is allowed to do it in the time that works for him, and that we don't potentially ruin any chance before it has the opportunity to get off the ground either.
Well, I guess what can we say? We're a Parramatta and Rugby League podcast, and here we are talking about him. So the media attention...
It says a bit, doesn't it?
It certainly does say a bit. Well, fellas, that just about brings us to the end of this podcast. What have we come in at, John, roughly?
Tick over hour 23, so not bad.
Not too bad. So, fellas, again, thank you for your fine efforts in tonight's podcast, the penultimate podcast before Christmas, but we will be back with another podcast next week. Don't worry, Parramatta Eels fans, there's always something for us to talk about, whether it be in Paradise or across the NRL. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. And also thank you to all of our listeners out there for, we get some wonderful feedback from all of you. We appreciate that. And, it really does motivate us to keep coming along with our regular news podcast. Now, I did say that it was our penultimate podcast, but I'm talking about penultimate news podcast. We will have some other podcasts coming your way as well in the lead up to Christmas, and then maybe also in the Christmas week itself. So stay tuned for that. But apart from that, fellas, as I always say, go you mighty Eels.